Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us for this week's edition of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. I'm your host, Marty Bennett, and this week on the Roundup, we're going to be answering 3 questions we've been hearing from international educators over the last 7 days. And as we do each week on the Roundup, we take our questions from news stories that appear in our weekly newsletter that we produce at SMIE Consulting. That's called All the SMIE News Fit to Share. I'm going to drop 3 links in the chat so that you can follow along if you haven't already subscribed to the newsletter. The newsletter comes out in 2 formats: an email blast that you can subscribe to on our website, smieconsulting.org/subscribe, and then also on LinkedIn, where you can subscribe and get that in your LinkedIn notifications every Monday at about 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So those 3 links can get you to the information you need, including the links for both editions of this week's newsletter in email and LinkedIn format. So subscribe to that as you see fit. We're up to almost 1,900 subscribers between the 2 methods. Really excited that so many international educators in the U.S. and abroad are making that newsletter a part of their international edification each week. Also, as part of what we like to do, as I mentioned, we take the questions that we do here in the Wednesday live chat, which is also available on demand on all 4 of our social channels: LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and available on audio-only podcast version too across all major podcast providers. Those questions come from the newsletter about or surrounding any of the major themes we see developing in the news each week, and we try and go a little bit next level with our commentary here on the Roundup. Our hot takes you get on Monday. Wednesday, we get the more in-depth conversations about the 3 relevant topics. So thanks to everybody who's watching live and those who obviously can't take time out of their busy days but make time to watch on repeat, either on any of the channels I mentioned or listening to the audio-only podcast. It's the week before NAFSA, and all through the house, everybody is stirring, and our schedules are full. My goodness, I can't imagine what next week is going to be like in New Orleans for the Big Easy, hosting 7,000-8,000 international educators from around the globe. My schedule is already chock-a-block from Tuesday, 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. or so on Tuesday morning, all the way through to Thursday evening. It's just a chaos reigns meeting. In addition to 30 individual appointments I've got 2 presentations and a poster session I'm doing, 4 or 5 receptions each night, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 2 even on Monday evening. So it is just going to be absolute zoo, going to be the most exhausting week of my life, the most exhilarating week of my life, as it is every year at NAFSA. Can't wait, but also can't wait for the vacation I have coming out after that. So let's get right into our 3 questions this week. Next week, we'll be going live from the NAFSA exhibit hall floor on Wednesday afternoon. But today, let's talk about 3 questions we've been hearing that will have some impact in next week's conference, I'm sure. First up, how do you connect with future Chinese students? Now, this is always a hot topic because China, up until this year, has been the number 1 source of international students in the United States and many other countries around the world, quickly being replaced by India. But between India and China, there's not much in between them in terms of total volume going abroad. There's probably more from India going abroad to a greater variety of destinations now. But we see China and India, those are the 2 800-pound gorillas in the room that you're never going to have another one of those pop onto the world scene. Just population-wise, we're number 3 on that list, and we're only not even half that, probably a third, not even a third of that for most of those, for both of those other countries. So China and India are the big 2 that you have to have a strategy for. And for those that have followed the Roundup for a while, what we do at SMIE Consulting, we've been looking at different trends in the numbers that we see of students coming to the United States and other destinations around the world. But China is still one of the most unique ecosystems for recruiting. It has its own challenges in terms of entry and travel within the country. Some easier travel than perhaps in other countries, but particularly if you're taking the train. Some less cooperative travel if you're taking airplanes into China. Certainly, prices have not yet returned to a pre-pandemic norms just because there aren't the flights in. We can't get U.S. airlines to fly certain routes because they can't go through Russia. They have extended routes, so there's less traffic that can get into China directly. So we have a lot of challenges with China just getting there and having boots on the ground. So most of us rely on agents in country, potential partnerships with universities that might serve as pipelines to bring students to the U.S. But what gets the broadest reach is in digital strategies when it comes to China. And there have been there are several, probably two in particular, that have been heavily invested in China for the last decade or more in terms of their presence with digital presence on the ground, as well as human capital as well. In terms of those two companies, Sunrise and Sunorbis, we've talked about each of those on the roundup here. There are others that have come into play in recent years to offer different services as well, but Sunorbis and Sunrise are probably the two best known to U.S. audiences. Now, with regards to how do you connect with future Chinese students, this focuses really on the digital aspect of that. And Sunorbis has recently released, they've had a number of white papers on the Chinese market that are very, very useful reading if you've not had any exposure to the digital ecosystem within China, not just social, but also website content that if it's not hosted behind the Great Firewall, your search ratings will be abysmal and load times will be even worse for your content to be visible to the Chinese audience. So how do you get around that? Having locally hosted sites, having ways to have your content distributed on different channels that, frankly, your future students are on. And we know they're on social media. We know they're living on their phones. And in China, speaking from personal experience in the last year, everything is digital in China. In fact, it's probably of the two largest countries in the world, it is by far the most digital heavy in terms of requirements for just getting around. You have to pay for everything using apps now in China. Even street vendors have their own QR codes so that you can pay using Alipay or WeChat Pay. But everything is digital. A digital currency, digital communications. That is how China operates these days. So what are you doing to get in front of these students who are digital netizens, who are attached to their phones in every sense of the word, and that they have particular channels that they use or are able to use that you need to ask yourself is in terms of outreach to China? Let's talk about digital. Yes, let's talk about the social specific channels that you have to use in China to be successful, like WeChat and some of the others. Beyond that, let's talk about online interactions for the Chinese market, and that will reveal some global study trends and how you can navigate those. And breaking down China, obviously it's a massive country, are the major cities where you need to focus your attention, and if you're not a top tier school, or do you need to focus on outlying more second and third tier cities and provinces in China? So this report that Sunorbis has gives some evidence to show that some provinces hold greater potential for HEI than others, and how you can target them. This report has how students are engaging with digital channels along the decision-making journey. What are they using most at different stages in the platform, in their journey from prospect to enrolled student? Also, what subjects are attracting the greatest interest and anxieties amongst the next generation of students? And finally, megatrends driving Chinese international student demand. Some of the country pressures, economic pressures, goes into all of that. So this was a report that Sunorbis has released. The link to that's in the chat. It's done in collaboration with BOSA, and that's the Beijing Overseas Study Service Association. So that's the agent network in Beijing, and as most significant one in China. So definitely it is coming from reputable sources and on the ground intel and digital data that will help inform future strategies. So definitely get your hold of that report. I know they're going to be at NAFSA next week, and certainly I'm meeting with them. I know if you're active in China, you'll be meeting with them as well. A lot of different ways that this data can be helpful to you in getting in front of the right students within China. Now, let's move on to our second question of the week, and that is a massive topic. And that is, do we focus enough on outcomes in international education? My answer to that would be no, we don't, but we should. And why should we? Because that's what our audience wants. They want to know outcomes. They want to know what my son or daughter is going to get when they graduate after I spend $250,000 or more on an education at your institution. They want to know percentages of students who get jobs in their field within 6 months of graduation. Obviously, international students only have a month or two to get that done with OPT, finding that first opportunity. How do we document specific numbers for international students? Obviously, there are three kind of buckets for international students, right, once they graduate. Some will go on for further graduate study, others will go back to their home countries to find work or study, and others will stay in the U.S. and go the OPT route. So of those three buckets, for the OPT, for those that are staying in the U.S., what are you doing to capture that information, the outcomes for your recent graduates on where they are now? What companies are they working for? Hopefully getting salary data, maybe not directly from them, but from your career services or alumni offices. Are we capturing the data that our future students need at the beginning of their review process? Are we really paying attention to all of the items that your future students want to know about what value your institution can deliver to them? Not just the great experience on campus, not just the ease of the admissions process, not just how great your current students are having it, but that outcomes piece. What am I going to do when I'm done with my degree? That matters so very much, particularly post-pandemic, for prospective students and their parents. Are you doing enough? That's the question. I would suggest that we are not, but let's talk about what that looks like. There's a few different articles that I'll be sharing with you. One that I think is really going to be a kick in the pants for a lot of institutions. And I'm not a fan of rankings. It's never been something that I think it kind of muddies the waters for students, and kind of is, as more rankings come on the line, the more diluted things can get in terms of what's ranking what and what the measurements are and how much weight is given to a reputation versus actual hard and fast numbers. So there's a whole lot here that we can really digest for international students to really end up providing the kind of information that your future students want to hear. Now, there's 4 articles that I've just dropped the links to in the chat. First up is one from the Chronicle that talks about the new Carnegie classification that's going to be launched in 2025. This is going to be the biggest classification reorg that Carnegie has done. It's the title of next update of the Carnegie classification will be its biggest yet. This is the title of the article from the Chronicle. What is it going to be focusing on? It's going to be focusing on whether colleges are either low or high access, and whether students earn low or high incomes after they leave. And this will be the first time that the closely watched classifications will consider who goes to a college and the college's student outcomes. Huge shift in the way institutions will be classified. And I said I don't like rankings. This is not a ranking. This is a classification. And of all the classifications and or rankings that are out there, this is the most timely one that will help institutions who are doing well better promote who they are and their outcomes to future students. So really like this opportunity in what it's going to do for future students to get a sense of how well currently our institutions are serving our students. So it's a really solid piece, and once that comes out, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of debate on the value of it. But certainly for me, in this day and age, it's calling a social and economic mobility classification. They've had a version of this that talks about socially mobile campuses and on the list. This is really helping paint a much broader picture on the value of the institutions as it relates to developing value in for their graduates. So check out that news article in the Chronicle on that, on the new Carnegie classifications. The second one, a little bit of an obscure one. It says five false college beliefs that harm international students. This is from Forbes, and it covers a wide range of topics, including advanced placement is a national curriculum, which it's not. Graduate student experiences translate to undergraduate. No, they don't. Students will graduate in 4 years, not on average, but international students typically do better than the domestic student. A college's selectivity is all important. Where are you? It's not. And the data will show a few different areas that will give us who are not top tier institutions a little bit of reason to celebrate. And certainly something that we should be including in Conflow messaging to future students that, hey, it's not all about the name on the building or the ranking of the school. It's about the quality of the education, and that you can get quality education across the board. And the two salient points that relate to outcomes that you want to know about, because we are serving the entire U.S. higher education community, and the report from the American Enterprise Institute that is quoted in this Forbes article, does more selective college equal a bigger paycheck? And it concludes that 4 years after graduation, two findings. Median earnings for college graduates from less selective four-year institutions appear broadly similar to those for graduates from more selective schools. More importantly, the earnings of graduates from less selective colleges appear to increase more rapidly than did those for more selective colleges. So that's encouraging data right there from this report. So that's another notch or another fact that you want to be incorporating into your messaging if you're not a top tier institution, that earnings from graduates from less selective institutions will increase more rapidly than those from their more selective peers. So that is a nice data point to have in there in your strategy, and that's over in a span 4 years after graduation. So that was a 2021 study. Now another article that was released coming out of the pie, it's related to one of the pathway providers, one of the longest standing ones, Into, that started in the noughties in the UK, expanded into the US and Australia eventually. That pathway provider has now launched an employability and career platform for their students. It's and according to this article, a bid to innovate access to enhanced career opportunities for international students. And importantly, this focus is on international opportunities back in their home countries. Because remember, there are three buckets of students: those that choose to go home and work, those that choose to stay in the U.S. and work, and those that choose to go on for further study. So this is a focus from Into here that helps students, as they're returning home, find jobs in their home countries. So this is, I think, a nice added value. I don't say that often about a lot of pathway providers, but partnership providers like Into, but they are certainly having this opportunity to expand the services that are available for for your current students who might be looking to go home. This is something that might make sense. It's called Return and Connect service. That is going to begin rolling out in 2024 across 4 countries initially: Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, and mainland China. So certainly good ones to start, high volume markets, and then rolling out in a more global scale from there. So right now it'll just be those East Asian countries. So that is another piece in the puzzle that helps emphasize how important these post-study work opportunities are in the outcomes side of our conversation. And this is why having that data is so important. When this focus on all the indicators are saying outcomes matter most, that career and job prospects, we talked about that last week, career and job prospects at your institution, that needs to be documented somewhere. That needs to be available. And students are looking for it at the country level, but they'll also be looking for it at the institutional level, because that matters. So that's determining sometimes where students will be looking to apply to colleges based on what the job prospects are in those other countries that they might be applying to. So make sure you're including that in your mix, because it matters. Now, one of the kind of the little things related to this, and a kind of a kind of a personal topic or example from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas experience. When you have graduates, this graduation season, we've just had ours last week or week and a half ago. Institutions are across the country going through graduation. There's so much energy, so much excitement, obviously, but with your international students that are graduating, you have some success stories in there. Not everybody's going to be a success. Some are going to go home with their tail between their legs and just be really sad about the missed opportunities they had here. Others are going to go off for further graduate study, but there are going to be few that stay and have jobs and you can get excited about. That can be the anecdotal stories that you can pull out at college fairs and you can include in Conflow messaging, that you can include on your social media presence. This is the kind of story. I've just posted the link to it. It's our local paper in Las Vegas, one of them, Las Vegas Sun, has released an article this past week about one of our probably most energetic undergraduate students from Vietnam, that is now just graduating. He was one of the big cheerleaders on our campus for School Spirit. He featured in the college tour videos that we had about a year and a half ago. He was one of the international students, of the 5 international students. He was one of those that was featured in those videos. He has been one of our first global student ambassadors that we piloted this year at UNLV. And now the article is titled, "Lessons Learned at UNLV Span the Globe for New Graduate." Oh, that is recruitment gold. This is an article that I want us to be using in our Conflows next year, that I'm going to be sending to our agencies in Vietnam that work with prospective students, that they can share this student success story with their future students. This is absolutely essential, mining this kind of content once it's out there and someone else has put it out, not just your local in-house news channels for the university, but when a local paper is picked up on one of your current students and their success based on what they've done on campus and what they've got looking forward ahead of them based on their experiences they've earned here, that gets eyeballs in the countries that you're going to use. You might want to use it in. So I guarantee you, our local Las Vegas Vietnamese community has already gotten this on their Facebook pages. I'm going to be sharing it this week with our agency partners, GSM, in Vietnam, and make sure that they're aware that this is a real success story for UNLV and for future Vietnamese students to see this as an example of what they could be like in 3, 4, 5 years. So this is the kind of outcome that you can capture. Everybody's got them. You've all got these stories that you want to be able to link back to in future efforts that you have. But capturing this now and striking while the iron is hot, so to speak, is a real important step all of us need to be taking whenever these kind of stories pop. So this is one that certainly I will be making the most of in milking it for all it's worth in the weeks and months to come. Now, let's move on to our final topic of the day, and it relates to, will a soft cap in Australia be the answer for migration issues there? Now, for those who haven't been following, we know that Canada in the last 6 months has introduced a 2-year cap of 30% or so, a 2-year cap on international student enrollments, and particularly targeting the vocational sector in that country, and it's a main aim to reduce the poorer quality students that had been coming in the past will hopefully be kept out by this new cap. So it's, again, focusing primarily on the vocational sector. It's about a 30% cap in reduction in study permits that are granted to future students looking to come to Canada. Now, this article is coming out of the Pi News. The article is titled, "Australia to Move to Cap-Like Limits on Enrollment in its Latest Salvo." And may cap a limit for a maximum number of new international student enrollments at any institution under plans devoted to address international ed and skills frameworks. So and I gotta love the Aussies. They have some really interesting words that they've used. Dodgy providers we've heard about before, and now the government wants to protect international students from quote unquote shonks seeking to take advantage of them. And shonks are a lot of these dodgy providers, and focusing this effort seems to be similar to what's happening in Canada in terms of a focus on the vocational sector, where a lot of the probably lower quality students are coming, and that's why they introduced their genuine student test recently, and that's another piece of their strategy to get rid of some of the dodgy operators in the market. So we'll see what that happens and what that limit looks like. There's been talk of this being that 34, and there's another article in the pie that 34 dodgy providers have been will be getting warning letters from the government, basically saying they're on notice that you got to clean up your act or you're going to be shut down, kind of notice. So interesting to see that as well, because these are ones that education providers that have been identified as producing or enrolling non-genuine or exploitative employing non-genuine or exploitative recruitment practices. They basically are put on 6 months notice that they got to significantly improve their behavior or risk being issued with suspension certificates. Would ban them in effect from recruiting international students, and breaches of such actions punishable by up to 2 years of imprisonment. So no joking around in the Australian government there. And what does this look like in terms of overall numbers? The migration numbers this past year, I think, were 540,000. That was the overseas migration numbers in 23-24 financial year. And they want to reduce that 540,000 to 250,000. So that's more than a 50% cut in the 24-25 fiscal year that's about to begin. So we don't know what that will mean as it directly impacts students, but can you imagine a 50% cut to international students? We don't know that all of that 540,000, that's not all international students. We don't know how that's going to break down, but can you imagine? That's refugees, that's families, temporary school visas, international student visas that are in that mix. How are you going to apportion those and be fair? So this is something that we really want to see. I think a lot of institutions are kind of holding their breath down there as to what that might look like for their institution. And you would guess that the group of 8 and some of the top institutions in Australia will be immune to some of those cuts, but and you would think it would focus mostly on the vocational sector, but it is going to be quite but it also seems that quite significant in terms of the impact. But the interesting quote here that we're seeing is that, quote unquote, international students are the only group that the government can be confident that they can reduce numbers and not have any electoral backlash. Electoral backlash because there's likely to be an election in 2025, and it's the limits that are being proposed are not and the article goes on to say they're not dissimilar to what Canada's doing in their study permit cap. So we'll definitely want to keep an eye on, and one that we will certainly be following here at the Roundup. So that is all we have for you this week on the Midweek Roundup. And as I said, it's been a pleasure coming to you live every week the last few weeks from the home office, but it's back on the road again next week from the Expo Hall floor at NAFSA. So looking forward to connecting with you all. For those that are going in person, hopefully we'll see you on the Expo Hall floor in 2 of the sessions or 3 of the sessions that I'm doing, or at one of the many, many receptions that we'll be covering. So until next week, we wish you the very best and have a great day. Cheers.